Welcome back to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by GrokTALK.com and Grok Media LLC. This week, we're going to take a few minutes to talk about housing and zoning. A new announcement from the Trump administration has spontaneously stimulated some thoughts in my brain, which I'm going to share with you, whether you like it or not. Actually, that's not true. You could just not listen. That's your option. It's a free country, sometimes. So anyway, that's where we're going today. We're also going to have a new feature called Beer of the Week, which will feature some beer that I had, that I tried, that I thought was pretty cool, or that has some backstory. Give you a little something else to think about and to look forward to, and maybe to hang on to long enough through all the other drivel to find out about that beer. This is GrokTALK, and we'll be back in less than 60 seconds. New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you. All right, we're back. Hey, how you doing? Looking forward to that beer thing? Me too. I enjoyed it, and I'm going to share it with you. So, came across an article on coffee and COVID about Section 8, and it got me thinking about the housing and zoning thing. Now, we've covered housing and zoning a lot on Granite Rock. You can search zoning or housing, and you'll find all sorts of interesting stuff about the situation in New Hampshire, where we, like probably where you are, have a housing crisis. Oh, there's a housing crisis. Interestingly enough, this has become very popular since the COVID era, when lots of people fled cities after Democrat mayors and governors enacted totalitarian-like mandates upon them, limiting their freedom. And they fled, those that could, as is always the case. They elect Democrats, they fund their campaigns, they support their initiatives, and when the boot comes to crush them, they leave, because they can afford to leave. And everybody else that's left behind who can't afford to leave is stuck with the boot on their neck, plus the added expense of paying taxes that the rich people who left are no longer paying. So that's what it's like to live under Democrats. Isn't that exciting? Anyway, a lot of them move here. They always move here because the crushing taxes that they pass in other New England states and New York and around the nation, they're like, well, we kind of like the climate enough. We don't mind the cold. We like the change of seasons, but we really don't like the taxes. And then they come here and they vote for the same crap. So we've had this housing crisis since at least the beginning of this decade. Some would say longer. You could go back to Bill Clinton. You could go back to George Bush. You can go back to the 2008 mortgage bubble collapse, all kinds of stuff. And you'll find a lot of interesting things if you go there. The Fed, the Federal Reserve, for example, has been manipulating mortgage rates, interest rates, which affects mortgage rates, and that affects the house prices. You'll see a direct correlation between the manipulation and the price of houses. It isn't so much inventory, although of course it is. So in 2020, we had about 3,200 listings in the state of New Hampshire. In 2020, we have about 3,200 listings available in the state of New Hampshire. Interestingly enough, we have about 30,000 more people here if the estimates are correct. So we've got a lot more people, give or take. A lot of new implants, transplants, however you want to call them, implants. Yeah, some of those Democrats are implants, definitely. Not good ones either. And, obviously there's a housing situation going on. If you live in New Hampshire, you're familiar with the housing crisis, air quotes or scare quotes if you prefer, and the zoning debate. So the state legislature passed a whole bunch of bills that take some power away from the towns as far as zoning is concerned and give it to developers. Developers are going to build apartments preferably because they can make more money per square foot that way than they could doing anything else, especially in a lot of the places where the new zoning laws allow construction to happen. And that's fine. Everybody's like, well, we need more housing. We need more workforce housing. We need more housing people can afford. The problem is nobody's going to be able to afford it. It's not going to be cheaper, period. Right now, rents are averaging somewhere around $2,000 a month, up to $3,000 a month, depending on where you look. So the average is somewhere around $2,100. I mean, you can get $1,950, but it depends on the apartment, how many bedrooms, blah, 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 where it's located. If you want an apartment in Portsmouth, be prepared to spend $3,000 a month. Okay. If you look at the average cost of a mortgage in the state of New Hampshire, I went and dug that up, and I don't know if it's right here in front of me. It's about $2,305. So there's a difference of a couple $100 a month. And that's, so rent's $1,990 to $2,670. Those are the numbers I was looking for. So average a little over $2,000. Mortgages, $1,970 and $2,305. Not a lot of difference, interestingly enough, considering the cost of houses in the state of New Hampshire. But if you're going to build a bunch of apartments, they're not going to build apartments if they're not going to make money on them. So here's how, that sort of works out. The developers are going to put tons of apartments in. They're going to get just as much money for those apartments as they are getting now, which is a lot more money. Hundreds, thousands of apartments have been put up in New Hampshire. You're going to create urban density. You're going to more than likely add to the number of registered Democrats who then bend the political curve, spectrum, bar, whatever, to the left, right, left on your screen, left, doesn't matter. And I pontificated about this a good deal on Granite Rock. There's a risk that you're going to turn areas bluer, like Nashua, Manchester, Keene, probably not Portsmouth. That's pretty damn blue. Hanover's pretty damn blue. But you're going to add more voters, right? So they're going to begin to do what they've done in states like Washington and Oregon, where the density, and Maine, for example, much closer. The density of the blue areas has so many votes that you can't get federal or state level candidates elected who aren't Democrats. And that's a risk that we're taking for no real gain. I mean, we're not making apartments cheaper. If you wanted to make apartments cheaper, there's like about 1 million different things involved in that. And that includes the Federal Reserve, monetary policy. That includes anti-growth policies, environmental policies, building codes. There's a long list of things that could have an effect on housing. The only way you can really make housing affordable is if you subsidize it with taxpayer money. That's a live free or die state. I think there's something like that on this mug I'm drinking out of right here. Coffee, not beer. So what does that mean? Well, Section 8 housing, for example, which is kind of how I wanted to start all this, is taxpayer subsidized welfare housing. And you have, we have it here in New Hampshire. You have it everywhere. And there's rules for that. But lately the rules haven't been followed. So the Trump administration, the HUD secretary, let me see if I can pull the right bust up here. This is from VIN News. It is dated August 30th. The Department of Housing and Urban Development under Secretary Scott Turner is moving to tighten enforcement of federal housing rules by requiring Section 8 tenants to provide proof of U.S. citizenship or eligible immigration status. So think about that. Do we have a homelessness problem or a houselessness problem? Apparently we do. Do we have people panhandling in the median strips of shopping malls and restaurants everywhere? Yeah, we do. And we also have veterans who can't get a home, who need help. And now think about that. With so many immigrants, illegal aliens, come into this country, thanks to the Biden administration, that we were putting them up, taxpayers were paying to have them housed in expensive hotels in places like New York City. We've had immigrants housed in hotels in Vermont. There was a big debate about whether they were going to continue to fund that at the beginning of the year. We have had immigrants, illegal aliens, in hotels and motels in the state of New Hampshire. Why? Well, there's no Section 8 housing left, right? Because it's already filled up with, in some cases, illegal aliens. they're in Section 8 housing. You are paying not just to hotel them, but to put them in housing that would otherwise go to who? People who actually live here. American citizens, many of them veterans who fought in wars for us and risked their lives, who are on the street because people who aren't even citizens are sucking up space in Section 8 housing. And Section 8 housing, which is supposed to be temporary, has become this cultural, multi-generational thing, which is another issue they want to address. So Turner announced Friday that HUD has launched a nationwide audit of public housing authorities, warning that federal funding could be withheld from agencies that fail to verify tenant eligibility. The move follows President Trump's executive order directing federal agencies to ensure that taxpayer-funded benefits do not extend to undocumented migrants. No longer will illegal aliens be able to leave citizenship boxes blank or take advantage of HUD-funded housing, riding the coattails of hardworking American citizens, Turner said in a statement. Federal law already prohibits non-citizens without legal status from receiving housing assistance, but past administrations have allowed local housing authorities discretion in enforcement. Not anymore. They have 30 days to tell the federal government who is in the housing that taxpayers are funding and if they are legal citizens. As Jeff Childers said over at Coffee and COVID this morning, it's an issue because for big investors, Section 8 is steadier than the stock market. Government checks never bounce, and lenders get insanely valuable tax credits. For tenants, it fosters dependency and inflated rents. And for the bureaucrats, it is a permanent feeding ground. Section 8 is less a welfare program than a for-profit coral reef where schools of federal dollars activate activist groupers, Wall Street sharks, bureaucratic clownfish, and minnow-like immigrants all jostle for survival and an interdependent financial ecosystem. Nudge the reef, and the whole ecosystem shudders. Well, that's kind of what they're doing. So, within 30 days of receipt of this notice, HUD is requesting that every public housing authority, PHA, provide a full and comprehensive accounting of all tenants who are receiving a Section 8 voucher and or residing in HUD-funded housing. HUD is requiring the name, mailing address, number of bedrooms, the cost of the unit, and proof of American citizenship or eligible immigration status. As Childers notes, they're not telling them they have to kick them out. They're not telling them they're going to do anything. They're just telling them they have to get this information or they're going to lose their financial support, which means there isn't going to be any money for Section 8 housing, which means you can't hand out vouchers, or you have to pass that cost to local taxpayers and explain to them what the problem is, which they will say is, well, the federal government screwed us, Trump hates poor people. But the reality is Trump wants that space available for actual Americans who need it so that they can have some place to live to try to get back on their feet. Now, there doesn't appear to be any immediate interest in limiting the amount of time you can occupy Section 8 housing, but I think that would be a good idea because, again, these are safety nets, right? They're not, somebody said it somewhere, they're trampolines, not hammocks. I can't remember the quote. If I find out who said it, I will share that. But anyway, so that's the deal. Section 8 housing. Now, that's the only kind of housing you can have where you're going to have the word affordable, unless you get the developers to build more units than there is demand. Who's going to do that? Why would a developer who's making, let's say, $2,000 a month on an apartment on, say, 100,000 apartments or whatever the number is, build 50,000 more than he needs so people can only pay $1,000 a month for apartments? Or he has all kinds of apartments that are unoccupied because there isn't enough demand for the product, even though the price is low. Nobody's going to do that. So, and again, we have this Section 8 housing thing. That's workforce housing. That's UN 2030 Millennium Development Goals or whatever it's called. You know, we're going to build lots of housing that is then state funded and controlled, paid for by people who are actually working, and that's not what we want. Affordable housing is supposed to be sort of a graduated step up from living in the street, more or less, so you have an opportunity to have an address and go get a job or two. I've worked 3 jobs at some time to be able to afford the things or the situations I want, so my wife could stay home with my kids you make do with what you can. You pay your own way. And that psychology is sorely lacking, and it's been a while since we've really, really emphasized it everywhere. I think there's plenty of places. You've seen the videos. We have welfare queens who are like telling their children not to go get a job because it'll affect their SNAP benefits and their welfare and everything else. Those kids don't want to be trapped in that lifestyle, even though they've grown up in it, and they can't get a leg up from their own damn parent. That's where we are. And it's got to stop. Other issues that we should talk about if we're talking about adding more housing. I live in New Hampshire. It's the only not truly blue state in the Northeast. We have issues not just with physical structures, but you need to have water and electricity for those physical structures. The Northeast has a huge problem with electricity and energy production. We can't get natural gas up here from Pennsylvania or Ohio because states like New York and Massachusetts are against pipelines. They won't do any fracking, even though they have natural gas underneath their actual physical states. They will not tap. That would be just readily available and that people would buy because there's demand for energy. We would like very much for our exceptionally high electricity rates to go down. They just approved another rate increase. We're already getting screwed on electricity rates. We're going to get screwed some more. There's absolutely no excuse for it. We have to import LNG from foreign countries on giant ships that burn all sorts of carbon and release all these emissions that we're supposed to be fighting against, supposedly, if we give a damn about the environment. That's the only way we can get liquid natural gas into the goddamn state. It's stupid. So anyway, the Trump administration is working on that too, but you have to think about this. If we're going to add all these new structures, all these new houses, how are we going to power them? Why should I pay another 10, 20, or 30 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity for housing that's going to be filled with people who are going to vote to raise my taxes? I'm not a really big fan of that. I got to be honest. The other one is an axe I grind all the time. Water. What about the water? I live in Merrimack. You've heard this story before. We're on odd even watering days. Nobody really pays a lot of attention to it, to be honest, but we've been on odd even watering days for more than 10 years. Even in years when there's so much damn water, it's like record setting how much rain we've had. So here's the thing. If we have to do odd even watering, it's outdoor watering, by the way, washing your car, watering your lawn, crap like that. What are we going to do when we add another 50,000 freaking toilets, showers, sinks? What's the deal? Where are we going to get that resource from? Apparently, it's a restricted resource. It's limited in supply. We don't have tons of it. If you're in Nashua, they can give 30 million gallons of it a day or a week or whatever it is to some Chinese water bottling company. I mean, is it really a problem? Are you making the crap up? Have we had tons of water all this time, and all you're really doing is squeezing us because the rates have gone up quite a bit? We're charging a hell of a lot more for that and paying a lot more than we did just 2-3 years ago. And now you're going to add thousands and thousands of more users, which is only going to do what? Restrict supply more, increase demand, drive up cost. What are you trying to do? Kill us? The property tax thing's bad enough already. We're paying all these property taxes for crappy schools, mostly roads, municipal services, and like I said, crappy public schools. I think we need to do something about this. We need to stop saying, well, if we add all these extra apartments, that'll be good for New Hampshire. I don't see it. I'm not being nativist. I wasn't born here. I've lived here for 35 years, but I just think that there's a New Hampshire advantage, and adding a couple 100,000 residences for apartment dwellers isn't the answer to the problem. So I don't have the answer. I'm not going to say I do, but I do know that whatever we're doing, we have to be more thoughtful about it. And taking zoning rights away from local towns and cities really wasn't the answer. And I think we're going to see that that's going to punch us in the nuts in the next 10 years when this state becomes really blue, and everything else that used to be special about the state of New Hampshire, the advantage, will make us look, it'll go away. We'll look like Maine and Vermont. Vermont's a shithole right now. They're trying. I know there's some people over there giving it their all, trying to get some sense of stability back. But I think it's gone. It really is. And Maine's pretty damn close, too. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that, believe it or not. And once I edit this down, who knows what you'll actually end up hearing. Which brings me to the beer thing. This is empty. I drank it the other day. See? All gone. This is Abel Ebenezer's Operation Delta Dog. I didn't even really have this. I haven't been there in a while. But it's a hazy Indiana. It's an Indiana Pale Ale, man. It's a hazy India Pale Ale. It's an IPA. If you don't like IPAs, this one's pretty mild. You might want to give it a whirl, especially considering that Operation Delta Dog is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to reducing veteran suicide rates by rescuing homeless dogs and training them to be psychiatric service dogs for veterans suffering from PTSD, traumatic brain injury, TBI, and military sexual trauma, MST. By bringing together veterans and rescue dogs, we aim to provide healing support and a new lease on life for both. Service dogs provide more than just companionship. They are trained to perform specific tasks that help mitigate the symptoms of PTSD, TBI, and MST. From interrupting nightmares to providing a calming presence in stressful situations, these dogs offer life-changing support to their veterans. Find out how you can help by visiting operationdeltadog.org. So, good idea, good cause, good beer. I recommend it. I am not being reimbursed for this, but if the nice people at Abel Ebenezer want to send me some beer, I will be happy to talk about it on this program and to anybody that I see. For the record, Glory Not to Pray is still my favorite Abel Ebenezer beer. I've got quite a few. They are made right here in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and you should check them out. If you have a beer that you would like me to try or that you would like to give me to try or drop off at my house or whatever, I love beer. I'll give it a whirl and then we'll feature it at the end of another show. I have a beer lined up for next week already that I'm drinking this week that I find that I kind of enjoy. It is another IPA. I'm sorry. I love IPAs. I know some people hate them. I like them. I like hazy IPAs in particular. So that could be a focus of future programming, but I like all beer, and my favorite kind is free beer. So, we'll see where it goes. All right, that's it for this week. Lots of ranting about whatever, whether you care or not, and that's what we're here for. Please visit us at GrokTALK.com, read what we write, share what we write, watch our other podcasts, and hopefully we'll be back next week.